Hey guys, we are back for video 2 of day 1 of unit 2. We're going to pick up with some guys that you are probably pretty familiar with already. We're going to start with Michelangelo and look at some of the other Renaissance painters and sculptors. So um, this guy right here, this is Michelangelo. He excelled as a painter, as a sculptor, an architect, and a poet. He is most famous for how he portrayed the human body in his paintings and sculptures. He was able to create figures who were forceful and heroic and just amazing looking. His lifelike bodies were, nobody had seen art like that before. Among some of his achievements that he's most well known for are the Dome of St. Peter's, the Sistine Chapel, and David, the statue of David. Da Vinci is another well-known artist from this time, Leonardo da Vinci. He was a true Renaissance man in that he was a painter, a sculptor, an inventor, and a scientist. He was fascinated by how things worked. His notebook, he had notebook after notebook after notebook after notebook of pages. There were over 3,500 pages of notes with his observations and sketches in it. So then what he did, he took what he had observed and portrayed it in his art. The interesting thing about this notebook that he had, I'll pop back in here for a second. So the interesting thing about Da Vinci and his notebooks is that his handwriting is perfectly clear and legible, and you can read it easily as long as you're looking in a mirror. So when he took his notes, he managed to write everything backwards. Nobody's quite sure why he did it, but it's pretty fascinating to look at his stuff, though. All right, so some of his famous works are the Mona Lisa. There she is. Also the Last Supper, which you may be familiar with, and you can see some of his sketches here for a flying machine. This is one of his very famous sketches here of the anatomy of the male body. And also you can see that he sketched what he thought infants look like inside the womb. So, and if you can kind of look here, of course it's in Italian and not very easy to read for us, but you can see that it does look like the words are written backwards. So if we had a mirror, we could hold up there and it would probably make perfect sense to us. So who exactly are these humanists and what have they done? So I mentioned them a few slides back, but let's take just a minute to remember who they were and what they were all about. Humanists searched for manuscripts that were written in either Greek or Latin. They had this deep desire to understand how things worked. So, of course, they're going to appreciate human achievement. Another characteristic of a humanist is that they thought that people should live a meaningful life, that life should be enjoyed and not suffered through, kind of like what they thought in the Middle Ages. Another thing you need to keep in mind regarding humanists is that they use the vernacular. So I know vernacular was one of your vocab terms that you had to define in class. You should remember that that is when things are written in the common or the native language, okay? The language of the people. So it wasn't only written in Latin as it had been in the past. So let's look at a few of them. Petrarch is our first humanist that we are going to look at. He's a handsome fellow there. This is Francesco Petrarch. He's often called the father of the Renaissance humanism, and he was one of the most influential humanists. He was a great poet. He's most known for a collection of sonnets that he wrote to Laura. So here's the thing about Laura. So Laura was actually married to another man. Petrarch kind of had the hots for her and he wanted to get her attention, so he wrote all of these sonnets to her. We don't know a lot about Laura. She's kind of a mysterious woman, but we know that she died from the plague in about 1348. So guys, gals too, if you want to really impress your significant other with some wonderful love poetry, go to this guy for your inspiration. His stuff, he's written some of the greatest love poems that there ever were. So Petrarch, he's your guy if you want some nice love poetry. All right, Castiglione. This guy is going to be the one who is going to tell you all about how you should live your life, a proper life in society. He is known for writing the Book of Cont'd. And in this book, he explains how young men and young women should behave in society. So, guys, here's the deal for you. You should be charming and witty and well educated in the classics. He thought young men should be able to dance and sing and play music and write poetry. You should be a skilled rider of the horse. You should be a wrestler, a good wrestler, and you should also be a good swordsman. So that's what young men were expected to be able to do to be considered a Renaissance man. Ladies, y'all are not off the hook either. Sorry about that. Upper class women in Renaissance society were expected to know the classics as well. So we begin to see where women are becoming more and more educated versus where they were not being educated in the Middle Ages. You were also expected to be charming, of course, but no matter how educated you were not expected to participate nor have any sort of influence in politics at all. So the big thing you need to know for Castiglione is the Book of Courtier, and that in this book, he is teaching young people how they should behave in proper society. All right, on to Machiavelli. This guy is a real interesting guy. So he is famous for writing The Prince. Um, his name is Niccolo Machiavelli. He was also another well-known writer. Wrote The Prince, and what that does is it looks at the imperfect behavior of human beings, such as being selfish or being fickle and corrupt. The Prince, the book, is sort of a political guidebook where Machiavelli examines how a ruler can gain power and keep it. He was not a big fan of gaining power and then losing it. So he thought that you should gain power, and as a ruler, that's it, you should keep your power, no matter what. His basic line of thinking in this is the end justifies the means. So, for example, let's say that you guys decide that you don't like having me as your teacher anymore. So you all get together and you talk about it, and you're like, well, how's the best way to get a new teacher in our room? And you guys decide that the next time that we have class, you are going to jump me when I walk into class. Now, I am not suggesting that you guys do this. Please understand. No jumping Mrs. Roach, okay? But you guys decide that that's going to be the best way to do it. So you end up doing it. And you do end up getting a new teacher because I'm out for the rest of the school year. So the way you went about doing it, not the right way, not the best way to get a new teacher. But you did end up actually getting what you wanted in the long run. So your ends justified your means, meaning it doesn't matter what you have to do in order to get what you want. That's what you should do. So Machiavelli was certainly not concerned with what was morally right, but he was definitely more concerned with what was effective politically, and he would have done whatever it took to get that job done. His role models were Roman leaders. So if you think back on other lessons that you had in World I, when you learned about the Romans, you can understand where this kind of no-nonsense attitude from him is coming from. Okay, so that's everything for our day 1, video 2. Tomorrow we are going to look at the Northern Renaissance. So today we covered some important figures in the Renaissance, where the Renaissance began, as well as some of your basic vocab terms. Next class, we're going to talk about the Northern Renaissance. See you then.